When you love what you do and you're passionate about what you do, it impacts your heart in a really great way. And one of the things I think about, when we hear the word engagement, and if you're not someone like Nicole and I who live about this stuff, right, and we study it, but to most people, engagement is when you commit yourself in a deeply committed partnership with the person you love. It's when one person usually gets down on one knee and asks someone to marry them or be in a partnership. But truth be told, you can also really commit in a deep way to the mission and vision and values of a company as well. And when I think about this, and I think about some examples, when people just say, I do a job, as versus a career, think about the doctor who doesn't just say they practice medicine, but rather they tell you they save lives. Or a personal injury attorney who doesn't just practice law, but they actually stand up for others who can't. Or maybe it's the owner of a mom and pop pharmacy who stays an hour after closing because he heard that a little boy in the neighborhood was sick and needed medicine. Or it's the chef who owns an Italian restaurant and gets up at the crack of dawn to make pasta from scratch because that's how his grandmother did it in the old country. That's not about just going to a job. That's being passionate about the work that you do.
Through these causes, are there symptoms that someone would show when they're disengaged? And how can we be better at recognizing and diagnosing those symptoms?
So I think what happens with symptoms is that first you want to think about what does a great, engaged, magical culture look like, right? And we can look around Google and see a lot of that. But not every company is as lucky. But the holy grail is companies where you see people who are really creative and innovative and willing to take risks, and they're energetic about what they do, and they're committed, and you feel that vibrancy. What happens with disengagement is it shows up in two ways. It shows up individually, and it shows up organizationally. So let's talk individually first. From an individual perspective, what you start to see in people, maybe you start to notice some mood swings that maybe you hadn't seen before. All of a sudden, people start coming in a little later, maybe leaving a little earlier, maybe they're absent a little bit more. In meetings, they isolate themselves. There's kind of like they sit back with the arms folded, don't contribute like they used to, maybe slipping on deadlines. They give poor customer service. And you can see this kind of lethargy, right? The energy just really kind of slows down. And then organizationally, organizations that have low engagement overall tend not to be creative and innovative. They're not comfortable with change. They don't have great customer service and relationships. And depending on the industry, they might have increased safety issues because people aren't really paying attention. So it can manifest itself in different ways. Anyone has a choice. If you have friends who are going through this that maybe work for a company that's not as magical as Google, tell them to find their voice. Because really there's only kind of three things that happen, right? When I had my moment, if they have their face in the mirror moment and they reflect and they say, I'm disengaged, they can choose to just say, I own it, that's what's happening, and I need to be here, and I'm going to be here until something changes, right? Until maybe I get to a place where I can do something different. But I own that choice. Or you can choose to go to your manager and say, I'd love to tweak some things. I mean, think about the things you guys have here, right? Where you can go do some other work. You can do explorations. You can do bungee. You can, spend 20%, up to 20%, I think it is, right, of your time working on other projects. That's the single best cure for disengagement around. I wish other companies would learn from what you guys do, because that's incredibly powerful. What that's saying is we don't want to lose the employees who are here. We value them. You are the competitive advantage. Why wouldn't you have that kind of conversation, right? And be free to have that. Or frankly, the third choice is you can just choose to say, you know what? I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to walk away. And it may not happen overnight. And it's about creating lifelines and creating a plan and think about what you do. And one of the things I tell people, particularly people that are earlier on in their career, and I would say it to every one of you, everyone tells you to save for retirement. And you absolutely 1,000% need to be saving for retirement. But you also need to save for a walk-away fund, right? So that you have the ability to not feel stuck, if that's how you feel, but that you have the ability to do something else and to be able to say, you know what? Not right for me now. I'm going to walk away. And the thing that I tell people is, you always want to walk towards something instead of running away from something that's maybe not as good. Because the power is all within you to kind of find your voice. And to bring this all back kind of full circle, that's what happened to me. You know, I had those feelings that it wasn't right. And truthfully, I felt invisible, even in a very visible role. And I had to kind of create a lifeline so that I could take control and say, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. I need to go do something I'm passionate about. And that's when the best work comes in, no matter whether it's here or another company, or in my case, in my own home office.
My mother-in-law, 89, Alzheimer's, hasn't been in the workplace in 60 years. And my husband's taken a big gulp and thinking, how am I going to explain to her what employee engagement is? And he musters up everything I've always taught him about it, and he's read in my book because he was my proofreader. And he gets ready to explain what employee engagement is. He doesn't get 4 words in when she stops him cold. And she said, oh, honey, I know what employee engagement is. It's when you have employees who are hands-on and they have their hearts open. And so the last one is context, which was also part of my 6 C's, and it's my favorite one. And this is where I need an audience response here. How many of you in this room either have children or were a child yourself? Right? Every one of us. Now, the minute you tell a child to do something, what's the first thing they say? Why? Why? Yeah, but they do it in a much whinier voice, right? Why? Guess what? It's no different in the workplace. Your employees, your teams, they want to understand the why behind the what. So I'll give a couple of examples. An organization might have to do some cutbacks, right? That's normal. That goes on with the business cycle. And if you just stand up and just say, we're cutting back, we're going to be doing some job elimination, some layoffs, and you give no more context than that, people are going to be running to the proverbial water cooler. And there's going to be all this, oh my God, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, I need to get my resume together. When instead, if you stand up and you say, let me tell you why this is happening, because we're finding this really isn't the right approach, but we want to dedicate more resources maybe to now our virtual worlds, right, and our portal. And so now we're going to reinvest in other areas. That's giving the context.